Imagine a world where your heart's deepest desires are made into reality. The desire to escape the monotony and complacency adult life brings, to escape the once sought after dream job that you now despise, to have the power to actually change the world for the better, to have an ability to become someone else, to become a somebody because you feel like a nobody. That is the setting of the world of Jagan. Jagan is a seinen manga originally published by Big Comic Spirits magazine from February 2017 all the way to November 2021. A seinen manga is a manga that is targeted to the young adult demographic, essentially the 18+ crowds. And even though shonen manga is typically enjoyed by people of all ages and covers themes that anyone from any age group can enjoy, seinen is allowed to be more graphic with what they release, meaning more nudity and gore. The art is done by Kensuke Nishida, and the story is written by Muneyuki Kaneshiro, whose name may sound familiar because he is the writer of the popular shonen series Blue Lock. I actually didn't know that until I did research for this video. I guess after working on a seinen manga, he wanted to work on something that could garner a bit more mainstream appeal, and decided to create a shonen. If you happen to read both Blue Lock and Jagan, let me know down in the comments if you notice similarities between the two series, as I haven't read or watched Blue Lock yet. Before we get started, I do want to give a heads up as this story dives into some very dark topics, which I will get into later on in the video. To kick things off, Jagan follows the story of Shintaro Jagasaki, a 27-year-old beat cop who lives in the fictional city of Bupa, Tokyo. The story starts off showing us that Jagasaki is not satisfied by his daily life when he tries to get some drunk college kids that look way older than he does off the street for causing a ruckus. One of the kids clowns Jagasaki for not having sex and for not being able to have sex with the person he truly loves, which causes Jagasaki to fantasize about shooting them all away, just like his town mascot Bupanasu, a gun-toting eggplant that shoots away all his problems and enemies, something that Jagasaki strongly desires. After getting chewed out by his boss for entertaining the drunk kids, we follow Jagasaki to his home, where we get to see that he isn't just in a rut at his job, but also in his personal life. His girlfriend of many years talks about how her parents will be in town soon, and she thinks it's time for him to meet them, as they'll eventually be getting married. After making love to her, Jagasaki contemplates how lame his life has become, and again wishes that he can shoot away all his problems like his town mascot. The next day, thousands of frogs fall from the skies onto this unsuspecting city in an image straight out of a biblical event. We again follow Jagasaki at work, who's attempting to help a drunk businessman at the train station. Jagasaki finds solace in how honest this man is regarding his life, and thinks to himself that the only reason he himself is able to smile despite feeling empty and unfulfilled inside is he knows that at any moment he wants to, he can use his job-issued gun to take his own life. After chasing the drunken man onto the train to make sure he doesn't hurt himself, Jagasaki and his partner witness another businessman become irate and begin to verbally destroy his underling. After Jagasaki attempts to intervene as the man is causing a scene, the man is then warped into a monster which can slaughter people with his tongue in the literal sense. After the man murders several people, including Jagasaki's own partner, he maims Jagasaki by removing the fingers he was going to use to shoot him. Jagasaki then recounts his life and laments that it was a worthless one, and he wishes he could have at least gotten a chance to fire his gun once if his life was destined to end so pathetically. And in that moment, Jagasaki's strong desire to blow away his pathetic life and become like his gun-toting mascot manifests by shooting a bullet out of the fingers that were sliced off, killing the monstrous businessman and transforming Jagasaki's arm into a gun itself. Before Jagasaki can even come to grips with what's just transpired, a small talking owl descends onto the scene, killing and eating the frog that escaped from the transformed businessman's body, and introduces himself as Dokuchan. Dokuchan explains that these frogs are called frenzied frogs, and their purpose is to fuse with humans and feed off their suppressed desires in order to transform them into fractured humans. A fractured human being a beast that is warped based upon those human desires, which loses all sense of self and can no longer be considered a human. As the owl begins to monologue on how it is Jagasaki's purpose as a half-fractured human to find and kill all fractured humans, he aims his gun hand at Dokuchan and shoots him, ending the little owl's life. Still shaken by what just happened, Jagasaki rushes home to his girlfriend. Once he reaches home, Jagasaki explains that he wasn't feeling okay, so he decided to come home early as he was already close by. His girlfriend tries to cheer him up by offering various curry meals, much to the chagrin of Jagasaki, as curry isn't his favorite food. While she starts cooking, Jagasaki begins to process what has just happened, thinking on how he just murdered someone, how all those people on the train died, what was up with the talking owl, and what's happened to his arm, leading him to think that a situation out of the manga Parasite might have transpired and he may have his own Migi to talk to, leading to him asking his hand, is anyone there? Before he can communicate with his hand, he notices a frog in his home, but it's not just any frog, it's a frenzied frog. and it rushes over to his girlfriend and fuses with her. At this moment, his girlfriend finishes preparing their meal and brings it to the dinner table. Jagasaki attempts to gauge how she is feeling, but this turns into her talking about how they don't spend as much time together like when they first moved in together, and how due to her getting older, her chances of having a kid and starting a family are going to drop significantly. It seems like she's been bottling these feelings, these desires, for a while now, and never expressing them due to knowing how stressful and tiring Jagasaki's job is, and him never really wanting to talk about that stuff. However, things have changed. She's now the host of a frenzied frog, and Jagasaki remembers the words of the little owl he killed as his girlfriend is transformed into the fractured girlfriend warrior High Scorpion. Now a monster controlled solely by her desires, she attacks Jagasaki and begins to choke him while spouting things about marriage and no longer wanting to wait for Jagasaki to make the next move. Knowing that he only has two options, to live or die, Jagasaki aims his arm gun at his girlfriend and shoots her, ending her life. We then flash back to how Jagasaki and his girlfriend met. The two hit it off at a singles mixer after she notices how Jagasaki puts on a fake smile to not hurt anyone's feelings. She reassures him that he doesn't have to do that with her and can be honest with himself. Sometime after they both move in together, Jagasaki becomes worn down at work, and upon arriving at home, he presents his girlfriend with a fake smile, which signals the end of their relationship, as he stops being honest with her and starts to bottle his feelings away. In her final moments, she apologizes to Jagasaki for causing him to put on fake smiles and for becoming a burden to him. Outraged, Jagasaki demands that Dokuchan change her back to normal and also repair his arm, but Dokuchan explains that this is what he wanted. The frenzied frog inside of him manifested this arm based off of his desires and imagination, just the same as the frog warped the man on the train into a being that could kill with his tongue, because that's how he saw himself. It also transformed his girlfriend based off of her suppressed desires of being in a relationship that was past its due date. Dokuchan explains that once a human fractures, they can't go back, and the only reason Jagasaki hasn't fully become taken over by his desires is due to his frog being a tadpole, and without the help of turd balls that the owl provides after consuming a frenzied frog, he'll continue to fracture until his desires completely consume him. After forcing the turd ball into Jagasaki's nose, he officially dubs him Jagan, the half-fractured hero whose duty is to hunt down all the other fractured humans, while at the same time blowing away his boring and depressing future, which is exactly what Jagasaki wanted. The next day, Jagasaki reports to his higher-ups at work and lets him know everything he knows about what happened on the train, which isn't much, and they let him go. Jagasaki then heads home and preserves his girlfriend's head in his fridge, for plot reasons, and prepares for a wedding while trying to find out more about his current status from Doku. However, that doesn't really yield much results. While at the wedding, Jagasaki begins to contemplate on how hypocritical it is for him to attend a wedding just one day after killing his girlfriend. He laments how gaining the ability to blow things away didn't lead to an easier life, but a more cruel one. After being asked about his girlfriend, Jagasaki puts on another fake smile stating that they're living happily together, which causes his hand to fracture a little, making him rush to the bathroom to hide it. After realizing that he began to fracture because internally he felt the desire to shoot his way out of the wedding, he comes across Robahata, a nihilistic fellow who went to school with Jagasaki, who begins to talk about how pointless everything is and how happiness isn't real. Remember this fellow, as he becomes very important later on. Once Jagasaki returns to the wedding, he is shocked to find that the bride has fractured and transformed, her happiness and joy transforming her into the fractured human Metataurus. After defeating her, Jagasaki realizes that this act of killing fractured humans feels good and is the excitement that he didn't have in his boring life. He then makes up his mind to dedicate himself to killing all the other fractured humans out there. While recapping his recent escapades at work, Jagasaki is interrupted by his coworker Bell, who tells him to be careful out there and proceeds to show him sightings on the internet of more fractured humans, which excites Jagasaki as it means he'll soon be shooting bad guys again. Back at home, Jagasaki continues researching possible fractured human sightings when Dokuchan awakens and informs Jagasaki that after his most recent frenzied frog meal, he's gained more knowledge about what comes after killing all the fractured humans out there, something Jagasaki conveniently was contemplating only moments earlier. He lets us know that once all fractured humans are defeated, Jagasaki gets to bring one person back to life. The only problem being Jagasaki needs to kill himself for all the frogs to be wiped out. This cements Jagasaki's resolve to kill all the fractured humans as he considers giving his life to revive his dead girlfriend, who didn't deserve to die in the first place. Jagasaki then starts to face life with a more positive attitude, high off the feeling like he can accomplish anything, knowing that he's going to end his life in the noblest way possible. This causes him to contemplate on how this is how he felt as a child when he defended a fellow schoolmate from some bullies, which is what led him to become a policeman in the first place. He then realizes that many people probably feel the same way, and once reality hits and crushes those dreams, people tend to chase meanings of escape like books or TV or video games in order to feel omnipotence and at some capacity. Just then, Jagasaki's good times are interrupted by another fractured human by the name of Chiharu, a plant-armed human that completely overwhelms Jagasaki. He begins to explain that frenzied frogs feed on the chemicals that humans release in their brains like dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, and these chemicals cause a human to transform and become fractured. Since these chemicals are released when humans are happy, Chiharu states that fractured humans are beings that chase human happiness, and he respects those kinds of people that chase their own happiness selfishly. He then asks Jagasaki what his selfish desire is, to which he responds that he wants to give his life for his loved one. Chiharu states that this is the easiest and most boring form of selfishness and prepares to kill Jagasaki, who then states that he'll die according to his own will and breaks free from Chiharu's trap. Later, Jagasaki thinks about what Chiharu said and goes out to buy some drugs in order to increase his brain chemicals so that he can become stronger. While out, he runs into his co-worker Bell. The two then decide to grab lunch together, where Bell makes fun of Jagasaki for being such a kind person due to not making a fuss at the waitress getting his order wrong. Later on at work, Bell confesses that she likes Jagasaki and wishes to date him if he and his girlfriend ever break up, which catches him off guard. We then shift our focus to a middle school teacher who fractures after reaching his breaking point of dealing with parents upset with his teaching practices and students who don't respect him. Jagasaki hears commotion over the radio and rushes to the middle school to witness the horror of the massacre and the monster at the center of it all. The fractured human teacher, who was forced to swallow his dissatisfaction with the way things were, is now compelled to consume everything as desecration. A harrowing battle ensues as Jagasaki is pushed to the brink, and this is where we have to interrupt the flow of the story and talk about the massive elephant in the room. Around this time in the manga, the story decided to simultaneously show what's happening with Robahata, the nihilist that Jagasaki ran into back at the wedding. The manga has actually been cutting back to him earlier in the series, but I've been saving it for this part as it doesn't really move the plot forward, but it's not something I can just ignore. Turns out, Robahata is not only a nihilist, he's also an incel and a creep, and uses his job to gain access to women to creep on. And he ends up falling for one of the women he creeped on and involving himself in her life. Now at first, nothing too graphic happens aside from him pleasing himself to security camera footage of someone in the act. However, during this climactic battle between Jagasaki and the big-chinned alligator, Robahata fractures after finding out that the girl he's been seeing is into someone else. He doesn't fracture for good reasons though. He fractures into a person that can coerce other people into wanting to be intimate with him. This leads to a very graphic scene between him and the girl he liked, which is sandwiched in the same chapter that Jagasaki is fighting for his life, making enjoyment of the fight difficult if you are sensitive to these kind of things. The fight between Jagasaki wraps up with Chiharu coming to save him and Bell showing up to bring Jagasaki home so that he can recover, and this officially ends the introductory arc of Jagan. Graphic scenes aside, Jagan is a really interesting manga that I'd suggest to people, though I would tell you to skip any chapter that features Robahata, as that can be triggering. However, I understand why someone like that was included in the story. The author probably wanted to show that if you give people powers based on their desires, you're not always going to get people who want superpowers just so they can do fantastic things. You're going to get some twisted individuals who will want to impose their will on someone. I just wish he kept it contained within its own chapter and not pages away from a really dope fight within the series. If you can stomach that, then you should pick up the series. Right now, there aren't any official English translations, but you can find the series like I did somewhere online if you look hard enough. If you don't want to look for the series and would rather I do a video like this for the rest of the arcs, subscribe and let me know in the comments. Till then, peace.